and it's the POP Baking Club at 6 p.m. and we are making pie dough. I am making a pie crust 2 times, once in the mixer on the paddle and once in my food processor, which I don't do often, so hopefully I won't have any problems. All right, fit check. I already have my hair up because it's just an extra step, and I am not an extra step kind of person at all. All right, so my fit check is I got a nice clean white apron on. I have my safe brand new clogs. Just love them. Look how they're shiny. I feel like I'm like a little kid who's going to school with their shiny new clothes. My hair's back. I have no jewelry on, short fingernails. I've got my hair up. I'm going to sanitize my countertop and wash my hands, and I'm going to get started. All right, so let me clean off the counter. This is just a Lysol wipe. We are making a pie dough today 2 times. I'm going to make it once on the mixer, and I'm going to make it once in a food processor so that you can see it done twice. I'm going to mix a dough. I'm going to talk about first roll, and I'm going to make it flaky. I'm going to make a re-roll with the leftover and the scraps. So like I'm going to show a lattice and a couple different ways that you would use a first roll. Also, I'm going to go ahead and make it flaky. Flaky means you have bigger pieces of butter, and it means you get a flakier crust. Flakier crust has more layers, and if you think about it, the liquid can go between them. So it's not good for something like pecan souffle filling, right? Maybe better for something that's a little less liquidy. But I mean, even an apple pie is kind of liquidy. So there are a lot of ways you can mitigate it. You can blind bake, which solidifies it a bit. You can use a little smear of like cream cheese, which gives it a little bit of closure. I like to egg wash the inside of a pie shell and blind bake it, and that with the egg wash, that gives it a little bit of protection. So there are so many ways to go with the pie crust. We're going to try to keep it simple. Do you ever food press pie dough early stages? Okay, well, I would never process something twice. Like I would never get this dirty and a food processor dirty. And I'm also, I am going to do the food processor to show you, because I know a lot of people don't have a mixer, they only have a food processor. But what I'm going to tell you is, in the way that I think is that if I can do it in the bake shop to any size and quickly and efficiently, and that piece of equipment or that tool is either isn't going to work, it's unnecessary, it's not big enough, or it's a gadget, then I'm not going to use it. So on the paddle, on a mixer, you can do a 20-quart mixer, a 60-quart, or you can do a small one. Even in the $15,000 RoboCoops, the big food processors they have in restaurant settings, they don't even get that big. And they're always broken. I'm not joking. Mine is broken. You will see. And I'm doing a workaround for it. I can see Lou over there. He's so cute. Our apartment's right over there, so I can see over there. So I'm going to do both. But if I had, you want to just do one. You don't want to do two. And you're going to see, I truly believe that this method is different. And I'm not telling you I think it's different because I invented it. I'm telling you it's different because I was in the industry for 20 years before I went back to school. And when I learned some of these details, my mind was blown. So do with it what you will, and incorporate what works for you. A pie crust could have a million things done to it to make it differently. So I want everyone to remember that there's no one answer, no one hack, no one ingredient, no one way to make everything perfect. There are only final outcomes. So when I think about a final outcome with a first roll flaky crust, I want it to be tender to the fork. I want lots of layers. I use butter. Butter has water in it. If I were to use lard, leaf lard, which is from a special part of the pig that has less flavor sort of in it than other parts of the pig, the water in my dough is what encapsulates at the microscopic level all the pieces of butter. So when that butter gets really, really hot, it's going to steam and press up that flour, and that's how you get the shingling and the layering. If you mix it in too much and incorporate it, like creaming it a bit too far, then you just get a lump. There's no expansion because you don't have chunks of butter creating layers all around the place. That's one thing. The other thing is, and this applies to anything where you have a layered laminated dough. So pie isn't laminated, but it is along the way. If you are baking or using dough that's been handled too much or left out too long or is warm and you put it in the oven, the butter will melt. When it's cold, it holds together until the water gets really hot without melting as soon, and then it steams. So we're going to talk a lot about time, temperature, and moisture. That's always super important. We're not working with emulsion because we're not emulsifying anything. In fact, we're trying to keep it apart. We're going to use time on the paddle, moisture added, and the concepts of time, temperature, and moisture to keep everything moving. I'm going to use my refrigerator, half sheet trays. I'm going to go in and out, and I'm going to move quickly. I don't need a recipe in front of me. I know that this is 4 ingredients: flour, water, salt, and butter. Very similar to bread. Bread is a very simple thing. I mean, it doesn't always have butter, but you can change those categories and call them fat, flour, liquid, and salt. So your fats could be lard, cream cheese, butter, shortening, vegan butter. Those are your fats. And they're all different. They all have different amounts of moisture in them, different proteins, all different. And then you have flour. And in the flour lives a lot of things. And we are using pastry flour, which is, what did I say it is? 8%. Yep, 8%. So this is the flour I ordered. And when I felt like they were running out of it at Christmas time, I ordered 20 bags of it because shipping's like the more you order, it's a better deal. So I just went ahead and ordered like 20 bags. And I'm almost on my last one. I have like 2 bags left. And I use this a lot. So at 8% protein, that's going to make it more delicate. Because remember, if this is bread flour proteins, this is maybe this guy, right? No. This is more like this guy. So this is all the gluten we have in it. So this is going to be stronger like bread, and this is going to be more delicate, right? You're not going to have as many things that grab onto each other. So I also, though, this is made from a soft wheat. Bread flour is made from a hard wheat. This has more starch in it than bread flour because if you look at 100% of something, there's only 8% protein. The rest is other things. If in bread flour you're at almost 12%, then that's more than the whole thing. So the whole rest of it is starches and other things. So that means this has a little more starch than bread flour. So when I use this flour, I have to think about if I were to use AP flour, AP is going to have less starch than this. So this is going to suck up more moisture. These are just extra things for you guys to think about. King Arthur pastry flour is the best. I like King Arthur flour, and I've met a lot of their people that are local because they keep local people in the system so that if you're a professional, you can call them. I've been to a lot of demonstrations, and the biggest thing you're getting from a large company like this is consistency, okay? And that's what I talk about all the time. Baking and pastry is about consistency with product and expectation. So they're always going to dial in the moisture content and the protein content. So it's not going to be random, and you're not going to get random results. So I'm going to get one set. I'm not going to pull what I have in the cooler. So in the cooler, I have my butter that's already scaled out, and I have my water, which is in the refrigerator. Now, if you want to get your water cold, you can throw it in the freezer, but I've done that a bunch and then it freezes. You can also take ice water and then strain it over the scale and scale it right when you need it. All right, but I am going to put my salt into the water so it can begin to dissolve. This is kosher salt, and there's different information on the internet, but here's what I will tell you. I can use sea salt or kosher salt. In theory, kosher salt has fewer other things in it than a sea salt. A sea salt might have more minerals, which are hard to dissolve. It's a smaller grain. But with kosher salt, it's more pure and it's a larger grain. So kosher salt is a larger grain, which actually has more surface area, which should dissolve better, okay? I'm going to start it on its dissolving journey right now. But when I add water to my already mixed butter and flour, I don't care if all the salt goes in there. So if I'm not going to use all my water, it's okay if not all the salt goes in there, but it's okay. I'm going to put this back. I'm going to put this back in the refrigerator, but this is how I cube my butter. I've done videos on it, but it should be cubed. You should never be taking big chunks of anything and throwing it into anything when you bake. It should all be nice and little. And I could put it in the freezer, but I don't need to. And then this is my water, cold. I use purified water. I have 90 grams of water, and I just scaled these twice. You can see how great this system is. I talked about this. This is a lot of salt, 9 grams of kosher salt. And again, if it doesn't all make it, that's okay. But I'm just going to give it a head start and let it start dissolving in the cooler. I think the magic of pie dough is when you begin mixing it. And it's the same with streusel. You're putting cold butter into a bowl with flour. Now, with streusel, you can be doing cocoa and seasonings like cinnamon and things like that. But the flour is going to, instead of creaming with the butter and creating air cells, it's just going to start to cut the butter. But the paddle is going to start to make the butter chunks smaller. And then those chunks are going to get microscopically covered with the flour. And that's going to continue. And then you get to stop it when it gets to the butter size. I don't chill the bowl. I work quickly. And that is something where there are lots of insurance policies you can have to mitigate. If you're in a hot climate, refrigerate it. If I had hot hands, I would refrigerate it. Think about all the things that are going to cause your butter to soften and then mitigate them. Not everyone needs to chill the bowl, but if you do, you can. That's why I talk about you can use the freezer. You could put your flour in the refrigerator, but that might introduce moisture. So do what you need to do to get the results you're looking for. And I am going to go with a relatively big chunk of butter. I just personally love really big chunks of butter, and I'm not afraid of them. And even when I ran pie sales through the schools and we would do, hundreds and hundreds of pie shells, and oftentimes just over the course of a couple days just to get them all banged out so we could get them in the freezer. You can see the chunks of butter, and it, I think, just lends an incredible flakiness. I think it's really fun, and I think that it can be a little hard for some people to roll out, though. Can make it sticky. So we're going to pay a lot of attention to temperature. I don't recommend using the microwave for softening butter ever, because even 1 second in the wrong direction, you've broken the emulsion, and then it is literally not appropriate for many, many, many things. I'm going to put this. So how we are going to begin is by, I'm going to add the flour first. And this is my pastry flour. And I'm going to take my sticker just to make sure it's on my countertop so I can verify I have the ingredient there. And I'm using a paddle. And remember, I am not into tricks, because the problem is if you get into gadgets, tricks, things that you need and rely on, and then you get into a problem and you don't have that stuff, you need to build the skills where you are, and then those skills will help you later. And Pickles, being impatient with baking is a problem, because we don't determine what the ingredients do, they do. We don't tell them how fast or slow to go. We have to let them tell us what's going on. And a lot of that has to do with the temperature in our homes, our outside, what it's like where we live, the ambient humidity, all that kind of stuff affects our dough. So in the wintertime, I'm going to have to add extra water to my dough to make it the right amount of moist or wet. But in the summertime, if it's really humid, I might not use all of the water. So when I do add the water, I'm only going to be adding 85%. We have 448 grams of flour. If you want this recipe, it's on the link tree, so you can check it out. And I actually don't have it in front of me, so I don't know the percentages, but this recipe has been made personally under my purview thousands of times. And it is excellent, and it's basic, and there's no sugar in it. If I wanted to add sugar, it's just a little bit, and that's more to make it go with something sweet. But I like a neutral dough. A neutral dough is good for a quiche, and I'm actually going to turn one of these into a quiche, so I get a little variability. Again, in the bake shop, you're always looking for ways to utilize stuff without having all kinds of extra special things and whatever to watch. So let me get the butter. It's going to go in first, and I'm going to start the mixer on low, and let's hope it doesn't all come flying out. Let me get my sticker. And our hands are the worst thing for dough. because they warm it up. And a lot of you have hot hands. And so we don't want to touch, in this case, we don't want to touch the bowl. We don't want to use our hands to touch anything, really. So right now we have very large visible chunks, and I have it on low. It's going very slowly. As it begins to change and get smaller, it is going to be more challenging for me to look at it and know what size the butter is. I'm going to have to stop it and use my hands, but I'm not going to pick it up this way. I'm going to put my hands under it and do this so that the flour can fall through. Otherwise, I won't really be able to know what size the butter. What's going on here? So the pieces are already getting smaller, and I'm just going to show you really quick, because this at some point, remember with everything, it does begin to move very quickly at the end. So I'm going to lift it up, and I'm going to do this. This way I actually can see what size the butter is. Some are small and some are a little bit larger. So I like doing all of my doughs on the mixer. I like doing streusel on the mixer, and streusel starts out exactly the same way. And as you work it, it becomes almost creamed, but when you pick it up, you have big chunks. I like to pull out the big chunks and bake those separately and keep going till it's a little smaller, like pea size, and then that becomes my crumble, which you can save frozen or you can bake right away after it's been chilled. But it's the same as a pie crust, a short dough. They're all just a little bit slightly different, and just like we did with all of the sponge cakes and the egg foams and how they're all a little different, but they work together, it's the same with this. All right, so let's see. All right, so these pieces are actually quite small, and these are not as big as I would like them to be, so I'm gonna stop. But there are some larger pieces. Okay, sorry, you probably can't see. Okay, so this is what I'm looking at, okay? So there are some large pieces, but I wish there were more. So let me get my hand under here. So your hand needs to go under it. So that's good. That's going to give us a flaky dough. If I keep going, it will start creaming even if the butter is cold. So now here's the stage where I'm going to add the water. And like I said, a good rule of thumb is to start with 85% of the water, and then you want to stop the mixer and you want to pull up a little bit of it. If I squeeze this, it's going to hold together a little bit. But the whole deal is that we want enough moisture that it's not a dry dough, but not too much. Too much, it's going to bind it too much and make it tough. All right, so here's my water. 90 grams of water. I'm going to stir it up just a tiny bit to get the salt incorporated just a little bit. And I'm going to pour it in with the mixer running, and I'm going to stop short at 85%, okay? So I can see the chunks of butter, but you can see it coming together, and you can see the larger chunks, all right? I think that this is good, but we will see. So if I were to lift this up, which I am, not if I were, I am. I can take this, first of all, I can feel the bottom of the bowl, make sure I don't have a bunch of dried bits on the bottom. This is what it looks like. So if I take this and squeeze it, it comes together very nicely. So I'm going to call it done. I don't need to add any more water. Oh, maybe I'll just a tiny bit. So if you add more water, you literally want to add a teaspoon, and you don't want to mix for long. Okay, there we go. So I don't want to touch this much. It's really not your friend to be touching this dough, even the paddle, because our hands are just incredibly warm. Okay. All right, here's where it gets fun. I mean, this is really where once I get started on this, this is when I'm having a good time. All right, I'm going to get rid of the mixer, because the next dough that I mix is going to be in a food processor. So like I said, this is where it gets fun. I like to have a slightly damp countertop because I use a full-size sheet pan. And I do this because when it's upright with the, you can read the label, I flip it over and this does not move, okay? Now I'm going to be moving it a little bit myself. So in order to not touch the dough a lot, I like to use tools. Now if I wanted to dial this in, I would pour this into a bowl on a scale, and actually I still could. Let me do it really quick. You just put the bowl on, because I know that most of my shells are around 300 grams. I just want to know, this is around 900, I think. No, it's 781. Okay. So now when you see this, it looks really dry and crumbly, right? So there are a couple things we can do with this. Okay. One, if I want to incorporate the butter a little bit more, I can use the heel of my hand as a façage. And it's a way of can you see, shingling the butter. Yeah, this really does stick. And I'm just going to very quickly with the heel of my hand go through and create these shingles. You see that? It's a shingle of butter. And that's just going to create little microscopic layers. And because I'm using the heel of my hand, I'm not incorporating a ton of warmth, and I'm working quickly. And this is just going to incorporate it a tiny bit more. And also, touching the dough a little bit is a good thing, because that's how we find out what it's doing. But I'm going to take this Silpat, and I'm going to use it in place of my hands. Okay, so I'm going to use it to bring this together without touching it. And at this point, I should be learning a lot about it. Is it super sticky? Is it sticking to the Silpat ridiculously? Is it coming together, or is it slightly crumbly? And yes, you are correct. You are going to learn more about the dough the more often you do this. So it is the kind of thing that you should play with. So then I have this King Arthur dough scraper that will not cut anything. Great for kids, and it's great for using on the tabletop. I'm going to clean this up just a little bit, and I'm going to make a circle with this, because let's see, maybe I will scale the 300. That'll get me closer to what I need. So instead of touching it, I'm going to cut it and keep my hands off of it. That's 309, so that's fine. I'm going to take this back, clean this up, and then I'm going to use the Silpat to make a circle, because when you are rolling the dough, the closer you are to the finished shape, the less you're going to have to work the dough. And the less you work the dough, the better. You cannot use parchment to do this part because it slips and it slides and it crinkles, and it's literally just not the same thing. I wish it weren't. I wish it was the same, but it isn't. So you want to put this in a circle, and you'll see I do touch it, but I'm touching it very little. I'm going to use my hands to get it into shape. And if I am inexperienced at this point, I could pop this in the cooler until I need it to firm up a bit so it's not sticky. But I don't need it to, because I'm pretty adept at working with most difficult doughs. Here's something else you need to know. This is bread flour. Bread flour does not absorb as much moisture, doesn't have as much starch. So that's your bench flour. This is what I'm going to put in a half deli cup right up here at the top of my Silpat. And that is going to help me. So to keep the Silpat from sliding around, you just want a clean, a little bit damp surface. That'll help it stick. So as I'm rolling it, it doesn't slide around. I'm going to take the bread flour and I'm going to make a line of it at the top. Can you guys see this? Okay. And I can put some on my hands. I don't want everything to stick. I'm going to do this. And you're gonna look at your dough and see if there are cracks and everything. Just use your Silpat, do what you can to kind of get those cracks out. The closer you are to the finished thing, the better. So I'm not going to sprinkle the top of this. I am going to take this through this line and I'm going to run it through like this, okay? There are two kinds of rolling pins. Straight and this tapered one. Okay, straight is great when you're doing cookie dough and things where you need it to be an even size, and these are guidelines, rolling dough guides. You can get these from, I think, Fat Daddy-O's. So when you roll it out, you're gonna get straight across the same thickness. And that's great for cookies and many, many things, or if you're inexperienced. But for this, I feel like this is, it's like one note. It's like trying to do detailed work with a sledgehammer. So this isn't my favorite style to use. However, it's wood, it's a hard wood. You can see through years of using it, the fat works its way in. So this never goes in the sink and gets washed. I just take a towel and I wipe it off like this. And the fat that lives inside my dough over the years cures this. These are pores, just like our skin. And the fat in our dough moisturizes and begins to create this sort of non-stick surface. So that's a miracle. You can tell I've had this one for years. You can see the line of fat, or maybe not, but okay. But anyway, I think that the ones that are out there, there's not enough of a taper. Like they're super fat and then they're fat in the ends. I really, if you can in person find one that's very thin, you see how thin that is compared to my hand? Very thin and then just slightly tapered. The difference between the battery ram and this is that these are my guidelines. This is how you hold pie dough. You do not lift it up like this. You do not turn it over. Ever. Don't lift it up like this with your pinchy fingers. You're always going to be putting this underneath. And when you do that and you gently take your hands, you can close your eyes and go around the dough and you can feel where it's thick. And then you can take this and like push those areas until it's a nice even thickness, okay? So here's what I'm gonna do. There's no flour on top. I did not put this in the refrigerator, but I could if I wanted to. And do if you're having problems, okay? So I'm going to, and you can even use this to keep it in shape, but I like to keep the edges from getting jaggedy early on, and then I'm just gonna work and show you. I always go from the center out, and then I stop, I turn it, and I go from center out. When you see me go inward, I'm not pressing. That is when I kind of am lifting and moving it. And if you move it every time you make one pass, you will never have a problem of your dough. See how I'm doing this? Run it through there. You will never have dough stick again. I mean, you might, but. So what I'm doing is keeping control. See how nice and round it is? And I can go through, I can feel it's thicker here, thinner there, and my hand is telling me. So then I can take this and I can go around and I can sort of push things where they need to go and I can keep it round. So if you've always really struggled with it either sticking or getting really out of shape, that's the problem. Now I'm getting a little toward what size I think I'm going to need. So I'm gonna get my shell, I'm gonna tell you how I know. The rolling pins with handles, again, they're great for like really billowy, pillowy, you know, donut dough and stuff, but it's like very one note. This is very nuanced. In pie dough, tart dough is very nuanced. These are my pie tins, and I've done videos on this. These are from Crown Cookware, and I'm so sorry you can't get them right now. And they make deeper ones, but these are like a heavy gauge aluminum. I love them, and I personally love baking on metal. Best heat transfer, okay? And one of the reasons, this is giant, but that's okay. I love aluminum foil, which is what I'm going to use now. This is a really pretty ceramic. Actually, this is porcelain, very nice, but you're getting insulating properties, so I don't like that because then the bottom doesn't cook. And then, pardon me, here's a really nice Pyrex, same thing, your bottom's never gonna bake. I just keep these as demonstrators, but I really like the metal, and you can switch them from the metal to the pretty ones before you give them away or whatever. Yeah, and these are recyclable, you can wash them, I reuse them unless I'm giving them to someone else. And this is my quiche shell, and it's a deep dish, and this is what I'm going to put my re-roll in. And I'm going to make a quiche, and that's mealy because you don't want the moisture to go through a quiche because it's cream and whatnot. So here's what I do. I take this and I put it on here to see, and it should be 1 inch to 2 inches around, and that's one indicator. And the other one is I'm going to get a little flour on here, and I'm going to go around and I'm going to think, is this smooth? Is it even? Is it thick enough? Is it too thin? Seems good to me. So I take flour and I make sure it's on my wrists and my hands, and I basically just lift it up and place it. Very uneventful, very low drama. I'll take this away. No drama, no drama. And here's the trick. So it should be on here evenly. Okay, so here's the trick. If you picture the bottom of the pan, right here like that, we want the dough to go in there, right? If you stretch it or push it in there, that makes you feel good, doesn't it, right? That's like, ooh, you did it. But you didn't, because the ingredients are like, we're going to do what we're going to do, lady. We're not listening to you. So you push it in there, and the gluten stretches, and then you don't let it relax. You don't give it time, or you do, or you fill it or you bake it, and then you say, oh, what happened? My sides shrank. Yes, they did. That's because you need to get it into that corner the way it wants to go. You need to think like your ingredients. What do they want? And I don't know how to explain, like with gluten, but when you activate it and it gets stretched, like with bread, when you just leave it alone, it relaxes. And so sometimes you might just want to let things sit. I could go put this in the refrigerator if this is too fragile. So when I make videos about, you know, thinking it's important to go right from mixing to rolling to putting it in the pan, that never means that you can't throw that bowl in the refrigerator for 10 minutes, or you couldn't put this in the refrigerator for 10 minutes. But I have just too many times gotten where I've refrigerated it too hard, and then it cracks and breaks and it's impossible. So you practice is going to get you where you need to be, not a trick. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pick up the dough, and I am going to not push it, but I'm going to let it drop in. And eventually, it's going to relax and drop into the corner. So see how it's kind of sticking up now? I have to envision what this corner looks like, okay? So I can put my hand in there and I can still feel a gap. So what I want to do now is lift up and then push and turn. Not push, but just lift and place. So I went once around and just dropped it in. Now I'm going around and I'm placing it and pushing it with the other hand. And I don't care how much is on the edges. You can cut the edge, you can cut it with scissors or a knife, but I like to weigh it and get it a little bit dialed in, but I don't care if there's 2 inches of dough. I like rolling it and then pinching it. When you bake that, and I learned this at Floreal, they do their quiches with this giant crust, and the crust gets really dark when it's baking, because you par bake it first and then you put the quiche in, it bakes, it gets really mahogany and dark. But there's so much flavor in there and so much flake, it's crazy. And it really is next level and world class. So a lot of you tell me you don't like pie, and I will tell you that even at nice bakeries I go into, I just shake my head. They're underbaked, they're white. Sometimes, I mean, even at like farm stands and artisan places, the lattice is like smushed in the fruit and it's like white. It hasn't been baked. This should be dark and brown and golden and have tons of flavor and be like, you can't stop eating it. You should want to eat the crust on its own because it should taste like a butter cookie, basically, a neutral butter cookie. All right, so then I'm going to keep going. Okay, so if you do a tart, tarts are supposed to be really pretty and the whole thing is on like the toppings. But a pie is supposed to be about this package of flavor. If you ignore the crust and you're all about the filling, You just missed the point. It is literally this incredible, it'd be like if you just ignored the pizza crust and the pizza. It's that important. All right, so here's what I'm gonna do. So now I always work toward me with this, but I just roll it, and I'm not crimping it. I'm just rolling, and I'll go around as many times as I need to, and I'm never in a rush. And this still feels cold to me. It doesn't feel warm. I can still feel the coolness, and because I'm not working it, it's just sitting here. It's not melting. It's not doing anything. Nobody's getting hurt. Now, in some areas, there's not as much as others, and I can just leave it. Who cares? It's not a big deal. Or I can pinch some off of the areas where there's more. Like right here, there's a lot more. Okay, so you can kind of see how it's like messy. And I like when I pinch it to be upright. So if I fill this thing with a lot of fruit, and I love to fill them full, and I love them to bubble over and be all over the tray and get caramelized and crazy good, okay? But I still like it to be tall. I think it helps hold in the juices. So this, if you look, is there's like a lot of space. Can you see the air space here? Right there. So I'm going to go through and just give it a little more of a twist and lift it and twist it as I'm lifting. And I'm not doing the crimp yet, but I'm just getting it on the top, and you'll see it's like upright. And this is not fancy. And this is, see? So now see how it's like the side walls are straighter? So then all I do for a crimp, and you can get into them as fancy as you want, is this and this. So you might need just a little bit of flour to keep your fingers from being sticky. So now I'm going to take my thumb and this, and I'm just going to hold. Actually, I do this. I just do this. And I go around. It's not fancy, but I think it ends up looking pretty. And I end up with little knuckle marks on the bottom of my pan. And if your thumb or fingers get a little sticky, then just get a tiny bit of flour. And this does not have to be perfect. It's going to look beautiful. And if you want to get fancier, you can read about fancier ways to do it. But honestly, I have never needed to do anything fancier. And if I want, I can do cutouts that are beautiful. I've done some really fancy pies. But this is fancy enough for me. I'm halfway done. It's very fast. Mostly my thumb gets sticky. And if you hit a piece of butter, that is what will get sticky, because your finger will sort of semi-melt it. All right. There we go. Not perfect, but it is functional. And personally, I would like to have more dough. So I did about 300 grams. I think if I'd done 325 to 350, that would have been nice. But that is my first crust. Now I need to be careful when I put this in the refrigerator that I don't just leave it forever and ever. I'm going to put it in the refrigerator, however, it could dry out. And I need to let this refrigerate overnight if I'm going to use it tomorrow, or I need to refrigerate it overnight so that the gluten and everything can relax, and also the starches can hydrate. But I'm going to need to wrap it. If I don't wrap it, it will dry out, and then that will ruin it. So like every step matters. This has not been rolled out yet. So what I'm going to do is roll it out really quickly as I'm going to make a lattice really fast, okay? A lattice is never made from re-roll. So if you think doing decorations with your leftover, your re-roll and your leftover dough, that's not what it's not supposed to be that way. You're supposed to use fresh dough. So I have fresh dough here, and I'm going to, and it's still pretty cold because my kitchen is chilly. And I'm going to make a rectangle. And it dried out a little bit just sitting over there. I mean, this stuff is so sensitive. So then I can take my Silpat and come in on the edges, although I do have some flour on here, and get everything straight, because the straighter you have it and the less shaggy the edges are, the more likely you are to have a nice, clean dough. I'm going to run it through the flour, And then I get to determine how thick my lattice is going to be in terms of, do I want it super fluffy or do I want it a little bit thinner? So I'm going to try to make it even. It is forgiving. This has softened up just a tiny bit because of the temperature. All right. I'm just going to work until I get it where I need to, and I'll come back to you guys. Now people, I've done this before and said don't touch it a lot, don't flip it around. People are like, yeah, but you're touching it a lot. I promise you, if you watch people with dough, I promise you, what I'm doing is mitigating some, it's not that bad. A lot of times you'll see people chatting and they'll be rubbing it and kind of playing with it and doing this, and it's just not good for the dough. You want to move as quickly as you can. And with this sitting out, you can see that even though it was sitting out a while, I'm still getting decent results. It's still relatively firm. And let's see. So this is my favorite method for doing a lattice. And if you want, you can do a gigantic lattice. And then I'll show you how to cut it. So instead of lifting and throwing the flour under there, I'm going to put my hands under here and I'm going to slide it through the flour. You see? It's so much better than lifting and tearing. All right, so let me see. It's pretty uneven, but let me double check here. Okay. Okay, feels pretty good. And you can fill in tears and you can play with it a little. You just need to keep moving. Okay? And then by doing that, and then sometimes I'll even take this and kind of bang the edges if it has cracks. So you can do whatever you need to do. Okay, so that feels pretty evenly rolled. And, okay. So here is where parchment comes in handy. Now, let me get this flour off of here. Okay, all right. I don't want to cut using anything on my Silpat. It's just a bad habit because then people are bound. So I'm going to use parchment. I'm going to flip it over. And I'm going to get another, this is the back. So I want to use the front. So I'm going to get another piece of parchment. And then I'm going to flip that over. And then I am good to go. I can cut on this. I don't have to worry about it. So I'm going to eyeball the lattice. You could measure it. If you're working in an environment where you're paying for anything, you absolutely need to measure, okay? So now I can eyeball this all day, but I'm going to go ahead and use the ruler just as a guide, and I'm going to clean this up. Now this just became re-roll, okay? This is going to go in a bowl, put it in the bowl, and I'm going to turn, and I'm just cleaning this up so that it's all even. Doesn't need to be necessarily, but that's how I work. And I'm not measuring it, but I am cleaning it up so that it's relatively straight. All right. Now, I don't know if any of you have made lattice before, but it's really just braiding, and I don't like doing this on a pie. I like doing it on the table and then transferring it, and I'll show you why. So I think that I'm just going to eyeball, I'm going to make it not too thick. I'm going to work quickly. And basically they should be all the same width. And when you place them, the distance they are placed apart is the same distance as they are wide. It's the same thing if you're piping a cake with a basket weave. That's the concept. And this little wheel would not cut my Silpat, but I'm all about practicing behaviors that don't require you to unlearn them. And by making a habit out of not cutting my Silpat, it kind of helps. So here's my re-roll. I'm going to use this to make a quiche dough. because the quiche dough needs a mealier dough that resists moisture because it has more water and wetness in it than, let's say, an apple pie or something like that. It's very liquidy. Okay, so what I'm going to do, and I can use another Silpat just for a lot of reasons, but I am going to take out every other. This is just a quick, this isn't a whole tutorial on how to do lattice, but there we go. So I'm going to leave them this far apart, and then every other one I'm just going to flip over. And you can see a lot of people do this on the pie. I just think it ends up messy. And then you're going to lay this across, and then you're going to close those two back down, and then you're going to fold over the others. And you lay it back down. I might have to read it. I always end up jimmy rigging these. I used to braid horses for money when I was a teenager. It was really good money. Maybe I'll just cut this one in half. And it was very technical, so I love braiding. But I'm obviously not an expert. All right. And, you know, doing every other skinny is kind of a nice look. So we'll go with being positive, right? So I'm going to cut this one thin too, and we'll do a pattern. No, I'll cut this one thin. We'll do a pattern. And I don't have to worry about how much I'm touching this other than if it's a problem for me and I can't manage and they're all falling apart. But it's going in the refrigerator, so it will be fine. So I want this to look nice. So I'm going to pull up the opposite, and I'm going to use a wider one. And then close it. The lattice pie crust, we are going to refrigerate on the tray, and then it can be wrapped and frozen. And I actually have an example in my freezer right now. Or you can refrigerate it and put it on a pie that's ready to go in the oven. But you want to make sure it's cold so that you don't get melting. You get nice puffing. And this is not re-roll. Remember, this is a first pass. Okay, so you guys can see this, okay? I'll show you what I do. That is a cake ring. And what you want to do is take a size of a cake ring. This is just a cake ring. And I can tell that it fits right into here, okay? So what I like to do is put this on here and position it so it's pretty and looks good. I don't want this to come back and bite me. Okay. So there we go. So all of this can come up and it's re-roll. So this will all go into my quiche. And again, I could do this mathematically so it works better. And then I pull this up. Now if this was frozen, which oftentimes I'll do whole sheet pans and then go through and bang out like a bunch of them. And when they're frozen, you can just lift it up so I can freeze it. So I will show you. So right now, these are going to go in the refrigerator. Let me get a pan. It's going to go here. I'll make sure it's in order. And then can move it around a little bit because it's not completely done yet. And there you go. So these two things are going to go, actually, why didn't I just put it lower over here? There we go. So this is going to go on here. These are going to go in the refrigerator. So I could leave this in there till it solidifies, and I have a bag that I can wrap it in. I'm going to leave it overnight, and tomorrow I can make a pie out of this very easily. But I'm going to show you my frozen one. This is a frozen lattice that I've had in the freezer for quite a while. So I could use this to go on the top of that pie if I didn't just make one. And this was all fresh. It's a little thicker, but it's ready to go. So once you've done this on here, it's cleaner, easier. You can stack them. They don't take up a lot of room. And it's a really great way to work. So I'm going to put this back in the freezer. We are going to do a crust in the food processor. And then I'm going to show you how I put it into the quiche container. All right. So for our dough making, we're going to use this attachment, not this one. We're going to use that one. So I'm going to work very quickly. I have to plug some stuff in here. All right, here we go. So here's my magic tool. This thing broke, like this guy broke back here. So it doesn't have the pin that goes and makes it go on. So I just use this to make it work. And it's not safe and I don't condone it. All right, so we have 270 grams of butter and 448 grams of pastry flour. Oh, I love broccoli too. And you know what? When the kids were little, I used to So this goes in first, then the flour. I used to buy whole wheat frozen crust, and I would just pour egg whites or just stirred up eggs into the shell over frozen broccoli and some like shredded cheddar. Ooh, mushroom and green garlic sounds good. And I would bake that for dinner quite often, sometimes like a vegetarian sausage in there. So a frozen crust is ingenious. I should show you the, so my salt's gonna go in here. I have pot pies that kind of are emblematic of what my stuff ends up looking like. I'm gonna stir in the salt. I'm gonna put all the butter in. This is all chilled butter that I've cubed. Gives it a little bit of a head start. And then, you know, I'm gonna put this on top just in case it flies all over the place. Okay, so when you're using your food processor, you wanna pulse a little bit. Do you recommend an American or European butter? I have some notes that are on my link tree, and I talk about it. This is an 83% butter fat by Cabot, so it's like a European style. More fat means less water. That might mean that I just end up using a little more water than if I were using like an American style. It has more water in it. So I don't prefer either. I just take note and then make adjustments. All right, so I'm gonna push the button and then I'm going to pulse. All right, here we go. So the butter is cold, but I just need to be careful. Butter to be a certain size, because you don't add the water until you get to the size butter that you want. So the butter is determining what kind of crust it is. And I am making a mealier one, and here are the pieces of butter. They look like peas. Okay. And I would say that that is a little too flaky for a quiche shell. So I'm going to keep going. And you add the water to add moisture and bring it together. But the size of the butter is our determining factor. Yeah, we're going to go pea size and maybe even a little mealier, because it is going to, typically all of my dough is going to be re-roll for a quiche. And if you think about it, if it's puffy and you don't dock it and you blind bake and it puffs up, it's softer and more absorbent. So obviously you wouldn't want to do that with a quiche. So we want to make this less absorbent. And the pulsing it allows things to move around so they don't start to get creamed or heated up by the friction. All right, so let me pour a little bit of water in. And we should be done. And again, this is not something that I do super often. Ooh, it's going to be hard to do both. All right, let me pour a little bit in and start. I want about 85% of the butter, and that's probably all. And then I'm going to show you how I put it in. I just, like I said, if you have the mixer, I like it. I think that it gives me more control. This is becoming a lump. And it could be because I'm not as experienced doing this on a regular basis. But, all right. I'm going to dump it out and bring it together. No problem. There. I'm going to pull my big Silpat, which I'm going to clean the counter so that it sticks a little bit, because the flour is going to make it not stick. And I'm going to turn it upside down, and I'm going to turn this out. Now on my quiche shell, I want a lot of crust on the top. So I don't mind it being a little bit bigger, and I think that this is going to be a good dough. Let me get all this into my dish bin over here. So remember that I take this and I just start, well, I can do the fromage. I can do, this will help me bring the crumbliness and the dry bits that are kind of all over. But if you're turning out a lump of dough, you've probably overmixed it, which is not a problem. Just remember, it's not going to be as flaky as you may have wanted it, if that is what you wanted. Okay. I'll push this all toward the center. And I want this to be a circle, and I need it to be a little deeper. I think I would give anything for the quiche shell that's even taller. You know, yeah, they're really hard to find. I want one that's like 4 inches thick. I really do. It puffed when you made it? Or did you use puff dough? So I'm getting this into a circular shape. I just mixed this pie dough. I'm using it for a quiche shell. Because if you get things into shape, then they are going to be closer to the finished product. You're going to have less work to do. So I'm banging and I'm working with the Silpat, all to try to keep my hands off the dough. But it's not going to hurt the dough if you get it a little bit warm. And if you get it too warm to handle, just put it in the refrigerator. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to clean this up. I'm going to put my flour at the top. I'm going to take a little bit into the center, because it's always the center where your dough sticks, isn't it? And then I'm going to look at where I have cracks, and I'm going to bang them out just a little bit. There we go. All right, so I'm going to start rolling this out, and this is my goal, okay? So I keep it nearby. Bang, bang helps, develop a little less gluten than if you're slowly touching it. And I'm going to run it through the flour so it doesn't stick. Okay, here we go. A little too much stickiness on my roller. If things start to get really crazy and out of control, just flip those edges in where you need to. Roll them in. So if the reason your dough got too thick or thin is because you kept rolling to get it even, stop and pull those areas in, fold them in, and then you won't have to keep going as far. So you can kind of stop at any point and make a mid-process change and reassess. And if that means you have to put it in the refrigerator for a second, then just do that. Give yourself a second. All right, so you remember I said it's like this. My hands are going to go under here, and I'm feeling it's quite thick, so I have a ways to go. It's a little sticky. And if this is way too big for my quiche thing, I can cut and trim. The quiche is going to be blind baked for sure, and I really like blind baking for a lot of reasons. I like doing all of my pie making on a pizza stone or a baking stone. All right, so I need a little more flour here, so what I'm going to do is get my hands underneath it and pull it through the flour. All right, struggle, struggle. There we go. All right, so I'm going to pull it together and regroup. And maybe just a little bit of flour on the top because it is sticky, and that is absolutely why I'm struggling. Yeah, I love doing the blind baking as well, Lauren, because I just don't like an underbaked bottom because it does not taste good. It doesn't look good, and it feels like an unfinished item. So the blind baking, and I read an article where somebody tested blind baking and then went ahead and baked the pie like all the way and just regular, as if they hadn't even blind baked, and it did nothing but improve flavor. So I love it too. All right, so I'm gonna call this round enough. It's a good thickness, and it's good. And I can see chunks of butter. So if I wanted to, if I had a refrigerator that this would fit into, because this is a full sheet, I would take this and let it chill for a second, but I'm gonna struggle it right into my quiche shell. Okay, I'm gonna clean up the area. I'm gonna take this as my quiche shell. It's a loose bottom quiche shell. And I'm gonna work quickly. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna put my hands underneath and lift and move. Okay. Move this out of the way. Push this where you guys can see it. Now this is where I have to work quickly, and this is where I'm going to pick it up and push it in. And this is very tall, so this, if you're gonna attempt something like this, is somewhat more challenging than a regular pie. The shell that is not as deep is a little more challenging. So I'm gonna let it fall in there. So I lift and push it in there, lift and push it in. Okay, so I think I have a tiny too much. I have my kitchen scissors, which are clean, but I don't want to cut too much off. I just want to even it up to where it's not hanging over. And at this point, if you have any holes or problems, you can fill it in with crust, not a big deal. I just don't want it to be crazy too much. Although if I were alone, I probably would have just, yeah, so this kind of cut, it fell off. All right, there we go. Okay, so I'm gonna lift it up and push it into the corners with my hand and make sure that this is all the way on the bottom, using my imagination and feeling. All right, and my knuckles. And then because it's fluted, I wanna lift this up and begin to push the dough into the fluted part so that I get the shape when it's being baked. And this is very soft and could have gone in the fridge for a minute, or I could have worked faster. Okay. So as you can see, some parts are a little bit broken, but I'm just gonna pinch things together. And then I'm going to start to roll it, just like I did with the pie. And if I need extra somewhere, I'm just going to flat out add it. It's pretty forgiving at this stage. So I do want to go in and make sure that I have a look of a fluted shell. Press it in there. You can kind of see that it's fluted. Okay, so now I'm going to roll it inward, just like I did before. Even though this is a straight metal edge, I'm just going to create my own edge. It doesn't need, because the other one, if you remember, it's not resting on the edge. It's like above and straight up and down. So there we go. And then I want to go around and add anywhere where I feel like this isn't as thick as other places, because I want it to be, you know, relatively even, and I want it to come upright. And then I'm going to pinch it, and it's going to be beautiful. So now I'm going to, in a way, go around and close my eyes and feel. And I want to build this up so it's like a nice shelf. And so a lot of this is intuition and playing. And there are no wrong, honestly. Yes, this is fussy. Yes, it is. But the payoff is high, and it's actually forgiving. Now, if I'd gone too far and made this super mealy crust and then tried doing all this, I'd be overworking it. All right, so now I have, like, it's nice and upright. You see that? It's gone all the way around. So I'm going to clean it up and make sure that I have a wall of dough that is, you know, on here, because I am going to blind bake this, and it's going to be full of a lot of liquid, and I want to build up as high as I can. So then I'm gonna pinch it. So I have a bit of re-roll I can use, which is exciting. Clean up just a little bit. Okay. So I'm gonna take my fingers, just like I did before. I'm going to crimp this. So I'm going to go around, and it would be best if I stuck this in the refrigerator, but we are not going to. I am going to persevere, and if I need to, I'm going to stick my thumb in some flour to dry it out. And it does not need to be perfect because it's going to bake rustic and pretty, and it's going to hold a lot of quiche batter, all of which I will make and I will show you on Sunday. So I did a lot of pie dough videos. I have done a lot. This doesn't even look that great. It's a mess, but I'm telling you, it's going to be great. But if you are working with this and it's hard to handle, like before I crimped it, it could have gone in the refrigerator for 5 minutes, for not long. It is going to bake beautifully, I agree. So there's some shagginess to it. I don't mind. I'm going to put this in the refrigerator, and then after about an hour or so, I'm going to wrap a bag around all of my stuff so that I can turn it into other things, all of which I'll be videoing, but then we'll talk about some stuff on Sunday. So I'll have some shells and fillings on Sunday to show you. This could bake for a long time. I mean, I bake my pies way longer than other people do. I do 350 until color starts to come, and then I turn it down to like 275 and I roast it. It could be an hour and a half. This is, you could use a springform pan. You could use a lot of things for a quiche. This is just a loose bottom. And I looked for this. It's like 2.5 inches tall. I would love to have a 4-inch tall. But I'm going to blind bake this guy. I would take homemade and rustic any day as well. I mean, I love beautiful. If it tastes really good, I don't care. But rustic and delicious is like mind-blowing. Let me go get let me get my frozen pies. Well, this isn't so bad. I have 2 left. So here's one, and it's got like a pretty floral cut. Those are air vents to let the steam out. And this is turkey. And I gotta tell you, I made that video last time, and people were like, ooh, it looks dry. Honestly, it finished cooking so late in the night that it was dark and I didn't want to video it, so I videoed it the next day. So it did look bad because it was like day-old filling, but it was really good. It was moist. This one has lines on it, but you can see that even though I have a lot of deep impressions, I mean, these I worked on very quickly. They look professional, so I'm not saying that I mean, obviously, you know that I can do a better job, but if it isn't perfect, it's okay. And if you undermix your dough and then overwork it on the table and into your pan, you've mitigated the problem. So if you go all the way mealy and then you overwork it, that's when you start to have problems. So if you want to freeze these pie shells, all you have to do is get them firmed up in the fridge and then take a little bit of parchment, and not even a lot, and put them between, and you can stack tons of pie shells and put them in a Ziploc. And it just makes life really easy. And you can have, without taking up much space at all, a lot of pie in your freezer so that you yourself can pull those out and make quiche at the last minute. You can throw a pie together really, really fast. And I, in particular, I love baking pies from frozen. I am thirsty. I like baking pies from frozen. I do that a lot. I make raw streusel, then I do the apple pie in the frozen crust with the streusel on with dabs of butter, freeze it, and then wrap it, and then I bake it straight in the oven. The stone, you have to put in the oven when you preheat so that, see, I drink soda water and bitters. It's like my favorite soda. So then you preheat it, and I preheat it with a sheet pan and a parchment. Like that, in there on the stone, preheat it, and then I put the frozen pie in there so that nothing's gonna crack or be a problem. And it's great. And then you bake it at 350 until you start to see it, loosen up, warm up a bit, and get a little bit of color, and then I knock it down to like 295 or 275 or something like that. And then I just go. I mean, just go until it's like the color, the type that you want. And I can even par bake a shell, fill it with the stuff, and then freeze it, and you're good to go. And you can egg wash the edges, only before you bake something. You can egg wash the whole thing before you par bake it. You can egg wash all of it and then put filling in it and then bake it. You can put a little smear of cream cheese on the bottom. What else? A lot of people have asked about making crust with vodka. And vodka's great. It can inhibit gluten production. It can do a lot of things. It evaporates in the oven nicely. So there are a lot of things you can do, but just keep in mind that whenever you're trying to do one thing, it's going to have other effects. So you have to think about what you're doing and why, and you know, that sort of thing. My back pocket egg wash is so easy, and all egg washes are different depending on the look and the thing that you want done with an egg wash, but mine is 1 egg, 1 yolk, pinch of salt, kosher, and like enough cream to make it light in color, and then I hand blend it without getting it foamy. And that gives me a very smooth, even egg wash that gives me a very golden, beautiful color. And you just want to picture your egg wash baked, because if you see glops and chunks of egg and stuff, you haven't done it nicely. Another refinement is that you can do an egg wash, let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes, and do a second egg wash. But then you're getting really refined. And I would do that if I were competing in a pie contest or something like that. What other tricks do I have? Now, I read a lot and I've done a bunch of videos about cream cheese crusts, and the only cream cheese crust I can recommend is Rose Levy Berenbaum's. And I did do a video about it, and it's because she balances the cream cheese and the butter. She adds cream and apple cider vinegar instead of water. So she makes a lot of adjustments to make it strong enough. But if you can master the crust I just told you, and I want you to know it's been done by hundreds and hundreds of first semester baking students. So it's meant to teach you a lot. And once you master it, then you can move on to more complicated ones. Do you use a cheese grater for the butter? I just cube it. I don't want a cheese grater because I want larger sizes. I like a macadamia to a pecan size for a flaky and a pea size for a mealy. So I don't do that, or to make the butter too small. Yeah, and I wanted to say, like, I know that people think and know that, you know, food is science and baking is science. But I'm not a scientist, and I get very nervous when things get too sciencey. So everything I'm talking about is based on feeling and intuition, believe it or not. Is you blind bake always? Not always. That's a good question, because I blind bake when I need the crust bottom to be baked all the way through, and I know that the inside of the pie is a quick pie bake. So like pecan pie, you bake it in 35 minutes, it's done. So you want to blind bake that. With an apple pie, if I don't blind bake it, I give it an egg wash on the edges, I put the filling in, and I put the crumble, and I freeze it whenever I bake it. It's going to be in there so long directly on the baking stone that I have confidence that over an hour it's going to look good. So here's how you know if a crust is baked enough. And you can test it with any of these. I could put the doughs that I've made into the oven and bake them. When you break it in half and you look inside, and I will do this on Sunday because I love the way the crusts look. It's crazy. But you break it and crack it and look. You should see all the layers. It should tell a story of the layers that you've made and what sort of method you've used. But if you take just a straight cookie, in fact, I made homemade graham crackers, and I'm going to do a video about them. But when you crack it in half, especially when it's light in color like our pie dough, you're brown on the outside, right? The brown should be all the way through. It should be like if you roast a nut, you just don't want it brown on the outside. You want to roast it through to the heart. So you go low and slow. And that's what we want to do with our pie. So I think about, well, what is the filling? How long does the filling need to cook? And if that's not long enough to get that toasting all the way through, then that's not good enough for me, right? So I don't know if you can see this. So these are my homemade graham crackers, and they are really good. They're very crumbly. So you can see, and I'm going to crack it. You can see the layering. And this is creaming. You don't overdo it, but it's the creaming method. Look at how lovely that is. Now this is dark from the whole wheat flour, the golden syrup, and the cinnamon. Oh, it just smells so good, and they're so thick. So your color should not just be on the outside, it should go all the way through. When you're baking a pie, I always check everything at 20 minutes. You take notes, because your recipe is going to be different than my recipe. You're going to have to, I always say, you're going to have to dial it in and take notes. When people put a recipe into a book or online or whatever, everyone should be able to make it. It shouldn't be a struggle for anybody, much less a professional. And if it's really good and it's been around for 30 years and it's, Ina's Outrageous Brownie is one of those where anyone can make it and it's going to turn out good. And it didn't just win by a little bit. It like blew everyone else out of the water. It was no question that it tasted great, looked great, was a great texture, and it just kind of went on and on. All right. So egg wash, pie filling. All right, so on Sunday, we're going to talk a lot about finishing it up, how to bake it, and take a look at some of the things that I've made. And I think that's it. So if you can, print this out, read through it. If you have questions or want to try the recipe between now and Sunday, make it and get it in the freezer, and then I can talk about different fillings and how to pair flavors and how to find recipes and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think I mentioned everything. I think we're good. So this is part 1 of Pie Dough Week, and part 2 is on Sunday at noon and Eastern Standard Time. So I will be back to discuss how to finish up and bake all of these pie crusts. Thank you. I really do appreciate you coming and sharing and learning, and your questions are always really good. And I use them to help develop what I'm going to say and to add to my notes. So I really appreciate it. But I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your week. We're just wrapping it up. I just finished making some pie crusts, and I'm going to come back on Sunday. So I'll see everybody on Sunday at noon. I'll put out a post that it's, you know, so that you know what we're doing. And I am also going to edit and get this up on YouTube as quickly as I can. And I will update my Substack, and I will be making videos about the quiche and other things. But if you want any more information, my playlist with pies and tarts is a goldmine, and I reordered it, and it's good to go. I hope everyone's feeling great and has a good rest of your week. Take care. I'll see you on Sunday. Happy baking. We're just wrapping it up. So I'll be back to bake, and you guys have a good night. Take care. Bye.